Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Joe Conroy here with Steve Maxwell. We're going to cover three topics today. We're going to talk about the 4th of July party briefly. We're going to talk about a stock intersection report. What is it and why would that be helpful for your financial plan? And the last is we're going to talk about 529. So we'll just jump right into it. So the 4th of July party, if you've been before, then you know it's an absolute blast. It is on the 4th of July, and that is when Bel Air has its Main Street Parade. So we're having a party, we're hosting everybody. If you know us, whether you're a client or just a friend of Harford Retirement Planners, you are welcome. We're going to have a food truck, a band, 2 face painters this year. Of course, we're bringing back the bleachers to put in the front yard, which I noticed there were some comments on local Facebook groups that put a smile on my face when I saw them. Oh, an important one is the outside air-conditioned bathrooms. It's a big deal. It's not very fun to talk about, but people appreciate it. In any event, we're very much looking forward to it. Please reach out to Jess Mills if you plan on coming, and if you don't, feel free to come anyway, even if you haven't RSVP'd. So the more, the merrier. All right, so let's switch gears and talk about a stock intersection report.
Yeah, so stock intersection report is something I think is kind of a little bit underutilized that we offer. So in times of volatility, it's tough to look at your statement and you see your investments and you probably think to yourself, well, okay, I see these mutual funds, I see, maybe exchange traded funds, maybe not a lot of individual stocks. So question that we like to pose to our clients is, well, do you actually understand what you own within these different mutual funds or these different exchange traded funds? That's the purpose of the stock intersection report. So what the stock intersection report can show is your underlying holdings in each of those funds. So why is that helpful? Well, in times of volatility, like we've had in the beginning of this year with the market kind of going up and down at an unexpected pace, it helps to be able to see, within my portfolio, I own Amazon, I own Microsoft, I own Apple, maybe Home Depot, maybe JP Morgan Chase. All of these large blue chip companies that we always talk about as kind of the bedrock of investing, you hold those within your portfolio. Even though you might not see them on your monthly statements, they're held within each of these funds. And it should help, and it does help with our clients, give them a little bit of peace of mind that, you know what, the companies that I own in my portfolio are high quality. So even though the market overall might be going down, I fear that maybe some of these companies are going to do poorly long term is probably going to be alleviated because I understand that, Amazon's still showing up to my house every day with packages. If you're anything like my house, I still have my Apple phone that I use every day. So these companies are huge companies. They're huge blue chip companies. We use that term just to define some of the biggest companies in the world. And they're here for the long term. And that's what we look at as your financial advisor. And we encourage you to look at as investors is the quality of the underlying companies within your portfolio, because as long-term investors, that's really the most important part. It's not the day-to-day movements in the stock market that concern us. It's making sure that we really have that foundation built into the portfolio that's going to be able to sustain those short-term moves. And hopefully if you're getting close to retirement or you're in retirement and you think to yourself, well, I don't really have time to go through some of these market changes, the downs of the market. Well, if you look at what's actually in your portfolio, it gives you that peace of mind and that comfort that, all these companies are built to last and they're going to be around in the long term. So I can stop worrying so much about the day-to-day movements and then really focus on the long-term growth of the portfolio. So that's something we're happy to run for our clients. We have some clients that love to see that when they come in for their reviews. So it's something you're ever interested in, just mention it to us. We'll have it prepared for you when you come in for your review, and we can go through, what those underlying investments are within the mutual funds that you own in your portfolio or the exchange traded funds, like I mentioned. So graduation season's here. I know a lot of us are starting to go to the graduation parties, and we're starting to have conversations with clients thinking about, well, what's the next phase? Going off to college, kids going off to college. And it also brings up a lot of topics from younger parents who are starting to think about saving for college. So we wanted to take some time and talk about potential options on how to fund college, specifically talking about 529 or education savings accounts, and the different types of ways that you can think about funding college, whether you're a couple months out from your first tuition or whether you have 18 years and a new baby that you're thinking about education for.
Steve, are you going to any graduation parties this year?
I am, Saturday.
Saturday?
Yeah.
So before we sat down to record this, I thought it'd be interesting. What's the average gift for a graduate? So I did just a brief search, and of course it says it depends, most of the sources. High school, I think you go a little bit less on average than college is what I've seen on the internet. And of course it depends on the relationship. So a friend of a friend or someone that you don't have such a direct connection to, you go a little bit lighter. Or if it's your child or maybe like a niece or a nephew or something, then the expectation... Not that there should be an expectation because a gift shouldn't come with expectations, but the average gift is $116 back in 2022 from what I saw.
Okay.
But that doesn't say if it was a grandparent or if it was whatever the connection was.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt. Averages are just that. There's a combination of different numbers on either side. How do we pay for school? It is so expensive, right? So there's only a few sources that we can draw from. It's either cash flow, money that we're earning and paying the tuition as we go. It is savings, so that could be cash in a savings account, a non-retirement portfolio. Another option of savings is 529, which of course I'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a second. The third is debt. So you have cash flow, you have savings, or you have debt, and that's really it. A lot of people, in my experience, after talking to families going through the whole college shopping and applying exercise, they really just think about what school they're going to, and a budget isn't usually at the very top of the list, which is interesting because if you go house shopping and you're talking to a realtor, they're going to say, what's your budget? What's the location, right? When you go to a school, it's what's your major, and then price isn't even mentioned. Well, we'll figure it out. If you don't have the money for it, it defaults to debt, and that just might not be an ideal situation for folks. One of the popular topics that we talk about are 529 plans. The reason we like them is the flexibility. So different than a custodial account that is actually owned by the child, but you're the custodian until they're legally old enough to make financial decisions for themselves. 529s are owned by whoever is giving the money. So the account owner could be the parent, as an example, and then the child would be the beneficiary. Flexibility, like I mentioned, let's say child number 1 gets a full ride, you can transfer the beneficiary from child 1 to child 2, and you wouldn't owe taxes on that transfer. So you can move it around different family members and change beneficiaries without a tax impact. Let's say all the kids get free rides, or they go to trade schools, and they don't need this big 529 plan account, then you can take the money back as a parent and put a pool in your backyard if you want to. Mm-hmm. Or you can use it to fund whatever, retirement. Now, there are tax considerations, so any of the growth in the account, if it's not for qualified expenses, would be taxed at ordinary income rates, and then there's a 10% penalty that's on top of that. That P word, penalty, kind of scares people off, but think about it, if the money's been in a 529 for a long period of time, it's tax deferred and potentially tax free. But you haven't been paying taxes on as you go, so that 10% penalty is just kind of recouping the IRS's money that they would have gotten if it was taxable the whole time. So it's not the worst penalty in the world. I know we don't like paying any kind of a penalty, but at least you have access to the money and you got some flexibility. I mentioned qualified expenses earlier, so what is that? So qualified expenses, tuition, room and board, things like that. Travel expenses to and from school are not qualified expenses, but they have also expanded the different uses for 529 funds. I mentioned trade schools. Trade schools are now a qualified expense if you have to buy whatever kind of tools and things you need if you're going to be a plumbing apprentice. And man, what a great way to avoid the whole college debt thing by skipping it all together and getting right into a job that they pay you to learn and you have job security. It's Amazon proof. So it's not just college, and it's also not just college age. It is now expanded K through 12. So if you're in the private school, or that might be something that you're considering in the future, you can take out up to $10,000 a year for a private school K through 12, and it wouldn't be subject to taxes or penalties. Another major change that came with the Secure Act not too long ago is that you can convert unused money from a 529 to a Roth. So child number 1, let's say that they have $20,000 left in their 529 after all the school expenses are done, and you're not going to put that pool in the backyard. You can take that money and year over year, whatever the annual Roth maximum is, you can convert it to the beneficiary, and it wouldn't owe taxes or penalties or anything like that. There are some rules they have to follow. It has to be in existence for 15 years. The money has to be there for at least 5 years. But that is a nice option to have. And when Steve and I are sitting down with folks, we like to have more options available to us so that we can pick whatever we think is best for the person across the table. More options are always better. But more options can be confusing. That's why you might want to work with a financial advisor if you don't have one to help you navigate and make sense of what the different options are and why you should do one thing or another. So we like, obviously, 529s. If you haven't picked up on that, super flexible, change the beneficiary taxes, all the good things that I already mentioned. So as graduation season is here and you're looking at the recent college graduate, maybe you've got young ones at home and you're thinking, man, how are they paying for this? Hopefully that college graduate doesn't have a mountain of debt and somebody at some point started some 529s and helped them. And they also looked at the cost of college and made sure they made a very practical decision. To wrap things up, 4th of July, it's going to be fun. Let us know if you're planning on attending. We would love to see your smiling faces. Stock intersection report. It can be confusing to know what you're really invested in when it's diversified and you have funds and ETFs and things. We can tell you exactly how many shares of Microsoft you own inside your portfolio. And that information helps ease the uncertainty that people feel with market volatility. So it's a very helpful tool for us to share with you and hopefully inject some extra confidence in your plan. Lastly, 529s are our preferred savings vehicle. Now, not for everybody, facts and circumstances, each individual is different. But really like 529s, they've expanded the uses, much more flexible.
One more point I want to make on 529s, and this is a question we see a fair amount. So 529s can either be held with a financial advisor like Harford Retirement Planners, or it can be held directly with the state. So in the state of Maryland, that's going to be T. Rowe Price. One thing we see is people will set up the 529s when the child is born or of younger age, and they set the investment and they do their contributions and they don't think about what the investment is by the time the child goes to school. So the investments within a 529 are very similar to investments you'll see within your 401k. You'll have things called target date funds, and those are set up so that the investment becomes more conservative as the child gets closer to needing the money. But you'll also have individual investments, so you can have things like growth funds or dividend funds, 100% stock funds. What we see all too often is people set up these accounts when the children are younger and set them up to be more aggressive because they want to optimize the rate of return over time, but they don't think about that when the child's getting ready to go to school. So one of the things we implore our clients to do, whether we manage the 529s or it's held outside of Harford Retirement Planners, is to look at the underlying investments in the account, because it's very important that as the child gets close to needing the money, we want to back down the amount of risk that's in the portfolio to ensure that we're preserving all that great growth that's been in there over the life of the 529, and we're not subjecting it to as much market volatility when the child needs it for college expenses or trade school or whatever it might be.
College is expensive enough. We don't want to add an extra 20% on top of it because the market dropped 20% and we totally forgot to rebalance to something conservative right before we have to write that check. If you're not sure how it's invested, send us a statement or talk to your financial advisor. Very quickly, we can tell you if we like it or if we would make some changes or how to think about it. So we hope everyone is doing well. We're always here for you. And as always, thank you for watching.